Good morning. Here we are again, another morning walk. A little chilly this morning. What would you expect in upstate New York for the warmest month of the year? Today I wanted to talk about Etsy and question I hear a lot about whether or not people should open up an Etsy shop. I definitely think you should, but be prepared for a couple of things. Number one, and probably the one that frustrates new Etsy shop owners the most, is the first few months you're probably not going to get any orders, or very few. I remember the first month, I think I was like negative amount at the end of the week, or at the end of the month rather, and then it slowly built up. It wasn't intentional on my part, but my fourth month happened to be November, which, due to the holidays, my sales like skyrocketed, and then it sort of plateaued off and went from there. The other thing people need to be aware of is that it's expensive. Not initially. I mean, it's 20 cents to list a new product. But when you actually make a sale, Etsy does take a rather large portion. And you'll hear a lot of people complain about that. And I'll admit that sometimes I complain about it as well. I was complaining about it so much at one point that I actually opened up a Shopify store, because Shopify doesn't take any money. I think it's a monthly fee. I can't really remember. It's a while ago. And so I opened up a Shopify, put all the same products in there. I advertised it the same way I did the Etsy shop. Kept the Etsy shop open, of course, because that was my main source of income at the time. And after 6 months, I made, I think, 3 sales on Shopify. So the main glaring difference, I mean, it was the same products, same, I don't really want to call it advertising because I don't use any paid advertising, but it was the same advertising. I was letting people know the same way that I did about the Etsy shop. And I quickly realized that my so-called marketing of my products on the Etsy shop and the Shopify shop weren't really bringing in that many sales. And where most of my sales were coming from was just traffic generated by Etsy itself. So if you look at it, that the money that Etsy is taking is really for the marketing that you're getting, it's well worth it. In fact, I would wager that it would probably cost you more if you opened up your own shop on Shopify or some other place that didn't advertise for you. That in the long run, you would probably be paying more to get fewer sales than you get with Etsy. So, yeah, Etsy takes money, but it is money well spent. They definitely make up for what they charge you in terms of fees and everything, purely by generating sales. So when you hear people complain about, oh, Etsy took so much money out of the sale, remind yourself that if it wasn't for Etsy, chances are you wouldn't be having that sale in the first place. So maybe instead of thinking how much Etsy took from you, you should be grateful for how much Etsy made for you. And that's my whole take on the Etsy fee situation. Another thing that you have to sort of deal with Etsy is they have certain standards that you need to meet, which, again, these aren't bad things. They're things like answering customer questions within 24 hours of receiving the message, and you need to have, I think it's 4 0.5 rating or higher, with customer reviews. And of course, the other one is the big one for me is shipping on time. That's usually where I fall short and why I'm not a star seller. Being a star seller isn't like a shop breaker. It's definitely a goal to go reach for. And if you drop too far below those ratings, and Etsy starts getting a little nervous and starts sending you uh, suggestions on how to get your shop back online, I guess, or back to their standards. And again, it's totally understandable. It's definitely things you should be doing anyway, but there are times when situations arise and you can't get a specific order out for whatever reason. Like, for instance, a customer may have given you the wrong address, which happens a lot more often than you'd think. And I always question how people don't know their own shipping address. But again, people move around, I guess. I don't know. I have no explanation for that one. A lot of times people have a P.O. box and they'll put their billing address. Of course, when you go to ship it, that address doesn't exist according to the post office. But anyway. So yeah, there's no real leniency. Like, there are times when you just can't ship out an order. Maybe you can't get your supplies. Maybe, you're buried in 6 foot of snow and the mail's not running today. So that's like a constant struggle, But the strange thing is, the only one that ever seems to complain about orders being late is Etsy. Out of the thousands of reviews that I've gotten, I think maybe less than 10 of them were people complaining about it took too long to get their product. But again, I sell toys. It's not late for death or anything like that. So, and a lot of the times, that's another thing. You got to have good communication with your customers. If your order's going to be late, let them know. Most people understand. Most people are fine with it. Again, they're toys. They're not really going to, if it's not like a gift for someone or they're trying to get it there, before a holiday or something like that. Most people are understanding. And the ones that aren't, you're not going to please everyone, which is another thing. If you open up any shop or do anything, you're going to find people that no matter what you do, they don't want to be satisfied. They don't want to be happy. And you just got to have to roll with that and accept that that's their problem, not yours. You do your best. And if your best isn't good enough for them, then that's something on them. So yeah, my Etsy shop, let's see. It's been running for 8 years now, which boggles my mind. For those of you that don't know, I never wanted to do this. I was one of those people that this is my hobby. This is what I enjoy doing. I don't want to try to make money off it and then lose my hobby because suddenly my hobby becomes work. I've been very fortunate that that's not happened. I still love the hobby, even though I'm pretty much, that's all I do. When I'm working or playing, I'm still doing the same thing. And it's awesome because I love it. I just, even after 8 years of doing it. So if I didn't want to do it, how did I get into it? This was, 8 years ago. A game called Gaslands was coming out. It was relatively new in my area. Anyway, I don't know how long it actually been out. And I was going to the local game stores and, I had just gotten a 3D printer, Creality CR10. And I had been modeling and printing my own weapons and accessories for my vehicles. So I'd go to these game shows or these game stores, and people would be like, "Wow, where'd you get those?" And I would explain, and 9 times out of 10 people that said that would be like, "Oh, you got to sell these things, man. You'd make a fortune." And I started hearing it enough, and I thought, you know what? Let's find out. And so I opened up an Etsy shop. And I didn't get any sales for 4 months, but But luckily I stuck with it and kept adding products, and then all of a sudden it just took off. And yeah, it's been growing ever since. I mean, I say that this was right around the time that COVID started. So, I mean, a lot of things sort of lined up for me. You know, you always hear these people, and I'm not calling myself a successful businessman, but you always see these interviews with successful businessmen, and they're like, well, how did you succeed? How did you go from, nothing into the heights that you're at? And they all say the same thing. It's like, oh, it's luck. And it is. It really is. I mean, I'm not saying I was one of the first ones to sell Gasland stuff, but I was definitely one of them. And between that and COVID, where everybody was staying home and looking for things to do at home, yeah, it definitely helped. I was making money hand over fist during COVID. So much so that I quit my job. I was working in a warehouse. It's a good job. I didn't mind it. Definitely wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, but it was a job, and it was paying the bills. So I was running the Etsy shop and working full time, and I did that for 2 years. And for the last year, I was making the same amount at the warehouse as I was with Etsy. And luckily, I was very smart and very single. And what happened is I started using all that extra money to pay off all my credit card debt. And basically, that was the only real debt I had. So when that was done, I took all those credit cards and I shredded them. I don't have credit cards. I haven't had credit cards for about 5 years now. And yes, you can live without credit cards. And because I wasn't, at the end of my credit card journey, I was paying $750 a month, just at the minimum, payment amount, which you should never pay anyway. But so yeah, I was buried in credit card debt at the time, and luckily, after a year, I wasn't out of it, but I was pretty close enough that my monthly expenses were low enough that I could leave the warehouse and just support myself strictly on Etsy. And that for me was the dream. That was the first dream anyway, and that had been the goal from the get-go, was to, once I saw that Etsy was actually going to start making money, then I thought, I can do this and not have to travel an hour to work 10 hours unloading tractor trailers and then driving an hour back. If I can instead sit around and create models and print them and sell them from the comfort of my own home, yeah, that was definitely the goal. And I got there. And it was good. I was making ridiculous amounts of money. And then COVID ended. And suddenly everyone was going back outside and they were touching grass for the first time in, over a year. And the last thing anyone wanted to do was play tabletop games. I mean, even nerds like me were like, no, I'm going to go out and see the world again. And my sales plummeted. And suddenly my savings were the only thing keeping me going. But, after a while of that, everything went back into balance. Sales went back up. During that time, at first out of desperation, but later it was a good thing I expanded my product lines from just Gaslands to a bunch of different genres and 28 millimeter and that sort of thing. And yeah, eventually that kind of helped even things out when Gaslands became less popular, although Gaslands is still my main number of sales are Gaslands related. And that's cool. I mean, it's an awesome game. If you never tried it, you should definitely try it. it's one of those games that it's fun whether you win or lose, sort of thing. Let's see, what else? Let's see. Etsy. And that's another thing about Etsy. I mean, I track my sales monthly and weekly. And after a certain number of years, you'll notice there's sort of a trend, I guess, that your sales will go up and down at certain months. You'll have slow months and you'll have fast months. And then after a few years, you realize, okay, so let's say February is a slow month. Okay. So to supplement that, February suddenly becomes your annual sale month, where you have your biggest sales of the year, and suddenly you're making more sales during February, and February is no longer your slowest month. So, I mean, that's another thing with your Etsy shop. I mean, you'll have weeks where you'll make ridiculous amounts of money, and then the next week you won't make anything. I mean, I've had times where I've made hundreds of dollars one week, and the next week, at the end of the week, it was negative something because all the money that I made for that week went into shipping out products from the previous week. And those weeks are a little scary, but you gotta have faith. You just gotta be like, okay, so this happened, but next week it'll be better. And it usually is, luckily. And you also have to learn to be good with money. If so when you have one of those good weeks where you're getting more money than you need to pay your bills, don't spend it all. Just, squirrel some of it away. Because next week you're probably not going to make any sales. For whatever reason. And the opposite is true as well. When you start tracking your monthly sales, you got to keep an eye on your busy times, because your busy times, that's when you really need to prepare for, order extra shipping supplies, order extra resin or whatever material you use to make and sell your products. But these things are all obvious, but they definitely help in the long run if you don't think about it, if you're new to this, or if you're thinking about getting into it. But you should definitely get into it. I mean, I'm glad I did, even if I didn't want to at first. It's definitely changed my life for the better. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for Etsy. I'm grateful for my customers. I'm grateful for living in a country that allows me to own my own business and generate enough income that I can do what I want to do. And that is priceless.